Hi there and welcome back. I do realize it's been a while, um, and it's been a while for a number of reasons. I've had some health difficulties. Um, I've had some stuff just going on in my life. I mean, obviously, if you're listening to this, if you're not watching the video, you can't see, but like I've cut bangs. So and with no regret, by the way. So like, someone's going through it when like they cut bangs. And then like they've got nothing to lose if they actually love the bangs, which is what's happening right now. But also, this episode is going to be pretty different from a lot of uh, what I've done before. And I've been trying to figure out what is the best venue for this extremely different episode and kind of what it represents in my career because I this topic has become so important to me over the past couple of months as I've been kind of evaluating what I should be doing with the podcast and all these writing projects I've got up in the air. Um, and what I realized is I've never fit in anywhere. So why should I worry about how to publish something that doesn't fit in? It's something I've written because it does not fit in. Because I don't know about defying genre, but right, I've received criticism that's like, well, does she play very much? I hardly ever hear her play. I guess she teaches, she sometimes writes. Oh, she's doing fiction, nonfiction, editing. What is this wine? Why is she talking about wine? And now we're going to be talking about something incredibly serious, something that has more of a journalistic edge to it. And although I am absolutely not a journalist, I've never been trained as a journalist, I'm a writer. Um, I think that I'm just going to expand the purview of things that don't fit in to include some more stuff. This episode actually comes with a bit of a content warning because we are going to be talking, not in any graphic terms, but we are going to be discussing sexual assault. So if that is something that you just can't tolerate today, I want to say I'm sorry, number one. Um, and number two, um, part of the reason this is so important to me, is people like you. So I will catch you on the next episode. Um, but basically, um, earlier on in the year, kind of at the end of winter, I had an opportunity to see Lara St. John's documentary, Dear Lara. And as soon as I finished it, I immediately just watched it a second time. And I just felt like my body was so alive and activated with every possible feeling that a sensitive person could have about this. So I was devastated. I was angry. I was bewildered. But also, I felt like this swelling of purpose and possibility, um, that if if there was anything that I could do with my very small platform to make the world that I love so much better and safer, that number one, I have a responsibility to do that, and number two, it would be a pleasure to do that. Um, and at first, I had some fear and trepidation, but in the end, the people who would quote unquote come for me, they have nothing to offer me anyway. I was never going to be hired by these people or published by them, respected by them, known by them. Um, so, and also, even if there was something they could try to take, um, that's not a good enough reason to not take some action. So that's what I'm doing right now. And so I decided I'm going to publish this piece on my website. I'm going to put it up as a podcast episode, and I'm going to throw it up on the YouTube channel. And um, yeah, with no further ado, um, I called this piece The Threshing Machine. The parable goes something like this. 10 men are in a room, and one of them makes a vile joke at the expense of women. 2 of the men laugh. 3 chuckle a bit to fit in, though they don't find it amusing. 4 say nothing, pretending they did not hear it at all. Afterward, 9 of the men believe they are the good guys, and that the one who made the joke is the exception. The room is real. It's a locker room, of course. It is also a staff lounge, a conference call, a cocktail party, a church vestry, a group chat, a political rally, a boardroom. These are spaces where currents of power intermingle seamlessly with depravity, where even a whiff of nonconformity can cost a career. Silence, after all, is golden. Violinist Lara St. John's documentary filmmaking debut is titled Dear Lara, which premiered at the Santa Barbara Film Festival earlier this year. Inspired by the overwhelming response to her public account of abuse in the Philadelphia Inquirer, it chronicles the devastating experiences she and others have been subject to at the hands of a trusted instructor, facilitated by a culture of institutional complicity that borders upon sadism. Dear Lara is beautiful, unflinching, and harrowing. Unadorned by any sense of overt production slickness, mechanics of abuse are laid bare. A filing cabinet drawer open just enough to obscure a studio window. Lessons organized to occur off campus. A throat gripped tightly to muffle screams. St. John, whose rape by Yasha Brodsky has been acknowledged by Curtis, was blackmailed into silence. Brodsky pointed out that if she told anyone, it would cost not only her, but her brother Scott their prized Curtis education. Throughout the film, original music composed and performed by St. John embodies the dual nature of the relationship to their instrument survivors often remark on. Music is a life-affirming vehicle for expression and authenticity, the love of which led them to their abusers. The way these systems are held in place could almost be described as elegant. Children who discover a passion for music are funneled into the academy as early as possible, and families who want their children to succeed are encouraged to essentially surrender them to the conservatory. Think Curtis, Colburn, Cheatham's. Once there, students are made acutely aware that their primary teacher has real scope to wield power, and the institutional rules are absolute. Every attendee is on probation during the entirety of their enrollment and may be dismissed at any time, further skewing the power dynamic and providing a muscular tool for punishment. Mature enough to have deep feelings about Brahms, but young enough to have little functional control of their lives, these children are wildly vulnerable to malign intent. When a student reports abuse, as St. John did in the months following her assaults, decision makers often respond with some combination of incredulity, defensiveness, and deflection. Former Curtis Dean Robert Fitzpatrick essentially asked what he was supposed to do about it, pointing out that people were less likely to believe a child accuser than a celebrated pedagogue. Eventually, it was decided that Lara would study with a different teacher. To commemorate this fresh start, the wife of the school director took St. John out for ice cream at a posh hotel. At the end of the conversation, one thing was clear. This was quid pro quo. For the privilege of this arrangement, she was expected to remain quiet. By the time St. John was ready to seek a legal remedy, the statute of limitations had expired. In Pennsylvania, plaintiffs have 2 years from the time of an assault to bring a case to court, meaning St. John would have had to have secured an attorney and built a case by age 16. According to Professor Marcy Hamilton, founder and CEO of Child USA, the average age of disclosure, when survivors feel ready to speak out and or go to court, is 52. The solution Hamilton proposes is simple. Eliminate the statute of limitations on allegations of child sexual abuse. Murder carries no statute of limitations, Hamilton notes, and is perhaps the only other crime where the victim is so utterly powerless after the fact. A familiar leitmotif accompanies these horrifying accounts of abuse. Like problematic Catholic priests, teachers who have done irreparable harm are allowed to resign for personal or family reasons and go on to find lucrative positions at other institutions. Highlighted in the film, Stephen Shipps, Raphael Druyan, Michael Brewer, Jan Repko, Chris Ling, Duncan McTeer. There are certainly more. After a student completes their conservatory training, the school helps facilitate the transition into a high-profile performing career. This is not an act of magnanimity. It is the expected return on investment. The institution shares in the spotlight, its reputation burnished, endowments secure. Once established in the music industry, many survivors feel unable to risk saying anything for fear of retribution, and also because one can never be sure how colleagues, even women, even other survivors, will react. Victims are painted as ungrateful for complaining. Why push back against a man, an institution, a system that imbues life with such beauty, purpose, and meaning? What will this mean for the legions of musicians who benefit from the status quo? There is a defensive cynicism at play. The idea that sexual harassment is just the way awkward or old men pay a compliment. Unwanted touching is not the end of the world. The occasional rape, the price of admission. It seems too ghastly to be the official policy of any organization, yet when you follow the money, it is implicit. This is common practice across industries. The FAA, for instance, privately estimated the troubled Boeing 737 MAX variant would suffer 15 crashes over a period of 30 years following the loss of Lion Air Flight 610. The fix would be expensive, and bad press could crater the stock price, so it was allowed to keep flying until the loss of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, after which the FAA pronouncement became public and the plane was grounded. A risk becomes de facto institutional policy if it is acknowledged but not remedied. So what of the outliers? The female aggressors, the men who've been assaulted, bullied, and harassed. While only an unserious interlocutor would venture a comparison to the number of male perpetrators, it's difficult to get a handle on the extent of these abuses. In addition to the pressures that discourage women from coming forward, male survivors risk being labeled, quote, not real men. Distilled to its purest form, the belief is that women are weak and thus allowed to be victims. Traumatized men who come forward are seen as something even worse. They're just like women. Where does excellence come from in the conservatory? Most would make the reasonable argument that it comes from both students and teachers. Institutions develop reputations for their superstar alumni, and over time the details become elided. It is the institution itself that is great, bestowing greatness upon the select few allowed within. It is natural to feel protective of these iconic places, to resist tinkering with an establishment that has yielded a steady stream of compelling, successful artists for generations. Yet, evolution is essential for any organism. Classical music survives despite the culture of normalized abuse, not because of it. Dear Lara closes with a hopeful example. In response to its own scandal, the Amsterdam University of the Arts took the calls for institutional transparency to a new level in the construction of its new conservatory. Students are taught by a team rather than a single primary instructor, avoiding the reliance on a single relationship to establish a path into professional music. The building itself is a series of lucent rectangles, inviting anyone passing by to witness lessons, rehearsals, and classes. In the film's final minutes, the dazzling campus is bathed in soft sunlight, the metaphorical antidote to secrets and shame. One reason our field resists change is because we have all been groomed, to some extent. Pedigree, tradition, lineage, these things are currency in classical music, and it is very human to resist retrofitting a long and deeply held respect for a person or an institution in the face of these unfurling scandals. It is also human to fear for one's own prospects, to quail at the thought of being that inconvenient voice of dissent in the room. Courage does not denote a lack of fear. It simply means that there are things more important than fear. I'd like to thank Lara St. John and Anne Majette for their invaluable help in the creation of this piece.